All right, trying the a more informal approach. Hence, got me a Guitar Hero mic. I thought I'd do films I've watched. I've forgotten what do they call the series? No, some sort of smart aleck, like what was it? Some films what I have been watching recently, sort of thing. A bit of a sort of fast show type title, but oh bollocks! I just realised I haven't changed the title to this video, so it's going to come under pickups number 100. Brilliant. So no, this is a video about films I've watched recently. I actually had a crack at this a couple of days ago, but it lasted sort of nearly an hour, and there was no method to it. There's no plan. I just sat down, and out of frustration at having not put up a video in a long time, I just sat down and just talked with no actual plan, and it was good in places, but other places, I will end up repeating myself as well, and it was really frustrating because there was a lot about that video I quite liked, but I've deleted it because it wasn't going to get uploaded, especially not in an hour long, and I'll probably forget a lot of the stuff I spoke about then, but hopefully I won't. But I don't want to say so too soon, don't know. But anyway, and also I wanted to make a video before I shave because I'm due to have a shave. Get my tits going. So yeah, and I thought, don't know. So yeah, the initial list I had, I don't know where it is. It's here. This is the initial list of films I had. This has been ongoing since before Christmas. This whole list of films, and a lot of this I had to cut out because I didn't really have that much to talk about anyway. Because a lot of them a long time ago, and they need to be fresh in my mind. And I tried to keep a lot of the ones that were fresh in my mind, but also the ones I had something to talk about. So there was about 30 odd films or so, or maybe 20, and a lot of them I had to cut out. And a lot of them, I tried to keep it positive as well. A lot of them I cut out because I didn't have much positive to say about them. I didn't want to. I know I should be honest, but I didn't want to sort of piss on anyone's chips. But so a couple of these are I'm almost quite evangelical about. The sort, is that the right word? Sorts of films that you think everyone should watch because you think they're that good, and regardless of what your tastes are, I think they sort of transcend taste. They're just that good. I don't know where to start actually. A couple of these sort of like tie into each other because they have connections with some of the other films. I don't know where to start. So talk about that last video having no plans. No plan with this video. I'm trying to get it done quick because there's people in the house and that door's open, and I know there's going to be people walking up and down the hall outside. So, which might give it a certain amount of sort of a certain tension to the video, which might be entertaining. I don't know. But first film, The Iron Giant. Excuse me. That's the thing with having holding a mic. A little bit of a tit with a mic and a drink. I have to do it with my left hand. But The Iron Giant. I think it was. I can't even remember what year it was. It's the 2000s, but it's an animated adaptation of the Ted Hughes story, The Iron Man, and it's sort of a Cold War parable allegory about that sort of Cold War paranoia of the enemy within idea, and I'm not going to try and talk about too much about the plots and stuff, but it's basically I want to encourage people to watch all these films, especially The Iron Giant. It's just I can't really criticise it. It's the sort of film that if you saw as a kid, it'd stick in your head. my little email indicator is going to come. I've got an email from Burt Reynolds or a reply to my comment. So it's going to hear it in a minute. It's going to put me off. But anyway, yeah, The Iron Giant. It's the sort of film that when you were, if you watched as a kid, it'd stick in your brain. There you go. It'd stick in your brain, and you might forget about it, but you down the years you'd always remember it. Then you'd watch it again, and the paranoia. Nostalgia would come flooding back, and you'd go, "Wow, yeah, it's that film. It's that good." I mean, there's so much to it. It's obviously it's about this kid in '50s America, and he makes a friend, and he encounters this giant robot that's obviously fallen from the sky, and sort of the authorities. The sort of rogue element of the authorities have been chasing him, and they're all paranoid about. Where the robots come from. They think he's like a Soviet invention, but there's so much to it. There's so much personality. The animation's brilliant. It's like a light sort of CGI hand drawn sort of combo, which is really effective. The writing's brilliant. It's one of those classic things where there's sort of jokes for the adults, but the kids can appreciate it for being this sort of brilliantly entertaining animation in the greatest tradition of all of those sort of Pixar sort of animations. But I don't think it quite predates those. I think it's round about that sort of era, the early 2000s. But it's so inventive and so entertaining, and it's brilliantly funny, and it looks amazing, and it's got a good cast actually. I think not that any of them spring to mind, but but it's The Iron Giant. It's if anyone's got kids, I don't have kids one day, but it's the sort of film I would sit down and watch that. You're going to love it, sort of thing, But I might even encourage my nieces. I've got 2 nieces. I might encourage my nieces to do that because I really want them to see it. I've encouraged friends and family to watch it, and I think my mum even sat down and watched it one day, and she loved it. But it's a brilliant film. It's The Iron Giant. I can't remember who it's by. It looks like a Disney film. Sorry. My beard goes outwards the longer it gets. It looks like a Disney film, but it's not. It's can't remember. No, it's gone. It's gone. But it has that sort of Disney style animation, but there's so much personality to it. I can't really fault it. It's one of those films. Like I love Fantastic Mr. Fox, and it's just as good as Fantastic Mr. Fox. As a kids' film that can be appreciated by adults, that's not sort of a Pixar, although they have their merits, but it transcends those. But yeah, I watched 2001. I don't really want to talk too much about 2001, but it's what can you really say? I'm going to use the word transcend again, but it transcends. It goes beyond sci-fi, isn't it? It's sort of like it's about the universe beyond human experience, beyond human evolution, and obviously not for everyone because it's quite abstract and ambiguous in that sense, and it's sort of quite challenging. And it does require that you link the dots, join the dots. But this is it's groundbreaking, isn't it? And I love it. To be honest, it's one of my favourite sci-fi films. I like how challenging it is. But there's a film I watched. That was on BBC Two actually. I watched the HD version on BBC Two HD. Surprisingly, it's obviously a reaction to, almost like a homage to 2001. It's called Love, which is a bit of a weird title. It makes it a bitch to search for on Amazon or on Google. It's called Love. It's by a guy called Gunnar Wright. It's a properly low budget film, but it's shot in just the cinematography is amazing. It just um, doesn't really show how low budget this is. It's obviously there's no getting around it. You could say it's to its detriment how closely it resembles 2001, but it's called Love. It's about a guy who goes on like a 6-month solo mission to a space station, and he takes this old sort of American Civil War diary with him and reads it, and a lot of sequences sort of from the diary play out in this beautifully shot sort of vignettes, I suppose you call them. They're like recreations of these what he's reading in this diary, and I suppose you could compare it to the scenes in sort of 2001 of the apes sort of learning to use the tools. It's that sort of through the ages idea. I don't really sort of know how to put it another way. You're an inarticulate bastard. Yeah, but I suppose you could compare it to that. But the actual sort of the main body of the plot of the film is where this guy he's in this space station. It's a solo mission, and part of the way through the film he loses contact with itchy nose. He loses contact with his ground control with Houston. I can't remember. It's and from that point on he sort of exists purely on he's solitary. He starts to lose it. He has life. What's the word? Life. What's the word they use in science fiction films to it means sort of food and oxygen and all that sort of thing and light. Not life preserves. He has everything to keep him alive, so to speak, but he doesn't have he doesn't have his lifeline, which is sort of his connection to the ground, and he starts to lose it, and he gets certain indications of what is going on, and then from that point on, it gets a bit existential, and it gets very 2001, put it that way. I mean, I'm going to show, for all these films I'm talking about, I'm going to show some screenshots. I'm not going to show any clips or anything. I'm not that clever. But show some screenshots, and you can see sort of the direct correlation between the two films. It's uncanny, but I can't really fault it for that. It's as much as anything a homage to 2001. It's funded. It's a really low budget film, but it's funded by a guy who was in Blink 182, who's now in. It's like an American skate rock prog rock band called Angels and Airwaves. That's what the music sounds like. I've forgotten his name. Probably Trent something. I don't know. And he funded this film, and it's almost like his passion project. It's called Love. I'll say it again. It's called Love. It's directed by a guy called Gunnar Wright. I can't remember the guy from Blink 182. I can't remember his name, but he does the soundtrack. He does the score, and it's very distinctive. Like I said, it's like prog rock with it's almost like ambient prog rock with sort of lots of American sort of skate influences, obviously, and it's really effective. Makes the film as much as it is a homage to 2001, it makes it quite distinct. It is distinct enough that you can appreciate it for what it is, for its on its own merits. But it beyond to the end of the film, through to the end of the film, it does get uncannily like 2001. I don't really want to give too much away, but I just have. But if you've seen 2001, you'll know exactly. But I like the paranoia of the main setup of being alone in this space station. That sort of psychological, isolation, being solitary and having to deal with it, and not knowing what's going on. I like that. I love that setup. But then from that point on, it becomes less about that and more, Anyway, but yeah, it's good. It's good. But brilliant. Obviously, 2001 is sort of groundbreaking. Love is an honourable homage. Um, right, what next? What next? Okay, that's what when I recorded this sort of a few days ago. I kept like going, what next? Talk into the bloody mic. It sounded, it looked like a good idea at the time. Let's have it a bit more relaxed and just hold the mic like this. But then you forget it's there and you forget you have to talk into it. But makes it a bit more relaxed and casual. And I like sitting a bit closer to the fucking hell, itchy nose. I like sitting a bit closer to the camera. Right, what next? There's a few here I want to leave to the end. So the next one, a film called The Wind and the Lion. The Wind and the Lion. I'll tie this into another film, a documentary, The Wind and the Lion. It's a bit strange. It's a sort of like a boy's own tale in that tradition. With those sort of Kipling tales. It feels a bit like a sort of Kipling tale, like from that sort of era. It's based on a true story. It stars, weirdly, Sean Connery of all people as a Berber chief. He's sort of the last chief of a dying tribe of North Moroccan Arabs. I'll put up some screenshots of him, and called the Faizuli. He's called. That's his character, the Faizuli, and he kidnaps. It's set. I can't remember. It's set Victorian times, sort of pre-First World War. It's set during the presidentship. Is that the right presidentship? I don't know if that's the right word, of Teddy Roosevelt. So it's around about that era. Teddy Roosevelt's a character in it. He's a pretty key character. But the actual, it's almost split too. It ducks backwards and forwards. Sean Connery's character, this Arab chief, kidnaps this American woman and her children. The American woman played by Candice Bergen, I think it is. I might be wrong on that one. Don't quote me on that one. He kidnaps her. I don't think it's ever really revealed why he kidnaps her, but it feels like something to do, And it becomes like a diplomatic incident, and the main bulk of the film is about it's almost like the beginning of Western influence in North Africa, and I suppose you could trace its sort of that incidence of the influence all the way down sort of through to sort of the political situations now. I suppose you could, because it starts in sort of North Africa, Morocco, and then you could easily understand why it might transfer over sort of east to the Middle East, but. He kidnaps this American woman and her kids, and Teddy Roosevelt uses that kidnap as a motivation to further American interests in North Africa. And it's interesting. The film's interesting because there's lots of factions, Western factions. There's Germans, there's French, there's British, and I think there may be others. I can't remember, but they're all featured in this film, and it's all about sort of they jockey for influence in North Africa, and they see North Africa for what it is. It's sort of and its untapped potential, but the Teddy Roosevelt's an interesting character in himself, because he. I think as the character, he reflects the director. The director is the feature for the documentary I mentioned called Milius. The director is John Milius. You might know him. He made the first. He directed the first Conan film. There's a funny story about it in the documentary about that, actually, about him and Dino De Laurentiis. He's probably better known as a screenwriter in Hollywood terms, or better respected as a screenwriter rather than he's actually directing. I mean, he's directed some decent, some weird stuff. Red Dawn was one of his. Big Wednesday, I think Big Wednesday was more of a writing. I can't remember. I missed that, but the documentary. But probably his best known for writing the script for Apocalypse Now, and he co-wrote the Quint. Sort of rewrote the Quint speech. You know, the Quint speech with Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider all sat around, sort of getting drunk together, and you know, Robert Shaw and John Milius wrote that speech, which has obviously gone down in history as one of the best sort of cinematic monologues ever. You know, it's not soliloquy, no. But anyway, John Milius had a hand in that, and he wrote countless other things that you know. I think the main part of the documentary is about him. He's the sort of the best sort of director, the best most. Is it the best Hollywood director you've never heard of, or something like that? I can't remember, but the idea is that when it comes to The Wind and the Lion, is that he puts his politics almost sort of through the Teddy Roosevelt character, because there's a section where Teddy Roosevelt's killed a lion, because obviously he's into hunting. He's that sort of character. I think he's probably a Republican character. Probably, I don't know. My knowledge of American politics is pretty slim, but he's killed a bear. And John Milius, the director, he's also into his guns. The NRA, that was it. I forgot that when I made this video last time. It's the NRA. He's sort of those sorts of characters. One of those. You don't get so many of in Hollywood. You know, he's sort of, they're quite rare. People like him in Charlton Heston, but he almost like his politics came out through Teddy Roosevelt, because in the film in The Wind and the Lion, Teddy Roosevelt kills a bear, and to begin with, doesn't like the design because he wants the bear stuff. Doesn't like the design that people have brought to him for this bear, because it's on all fours, and he sees the bear as the emblem of the American people, and he wants the bear to be upright in a fighting stance, because it's sort of a, you know, ever ready, but sort of not always, slightly foolhardy, but you know, always ready to fight their corner sort of thing. And it's that sort of thing that plays out in the film. And it's really interesting, and it's slightly dubious, because you do see the slightly dodgy politics. I mean, there's a nice sense of humour running through the film, but sometimes it's slightly uneasy. I mean, if you're coming from a sort of a slightly more liberal perspective, there's one section where the Americans are in a ship off, I think it's, I can't remember what the city is. It's a coastal city. They're in a ship, and they come ashore. They start off this. They basically try and start a coup to further their own influences, and they march through. They disembark off the boat, and they march through the town past all the locals, and all the locals are going, "Oh, what's going on here?" And they line up in front of the palace of this local sultan. And basically, they form like a firing line, and they bring a cannon in, and basically they attack the palace of this sultan, and you know, kill all these guards. It's totally unprovoked, by the way. Kill all these guards, and then make their way through the palace, killing all of the guards and all of the servants as well. And then they find the sultan on this sort of daybed, and and this daybed, and then they kill his servants. His servants are just like hanging around, going, and then they shoot them in cold blood. And then the captain sort of walks up to the sultan and says, sort of like, I don't know, you're under arrest sort of thing. And it's all done. It's always really bloodthirsty, but all done with this sort of a really odd sort of a nod and a wink and a, you know, like lightheartedness, which sits a bit. It's a bit iffy, but I don't know. It's brilliantly entertaining though. You can't. It's in that sort of boy's own sort of tradition, that, you know, that Kipling tradition. It's brilliantly shot. It's got an epic score, brilliantly shot. It looks stunning, but it's just an odd film. I do really enjoy that. It's entertaining, but the politics are just a bit iffy. It's The Wind and the Lion. I mean, and if you do get an opportunity to see the documentary Milius, I urge you to as well, because he's a really interesting character. Quite ended up quite sad because he ended up. It's well known. He had a stroke, and the character, he's the sort of character who the people who know him, not the easiest person to get on with, not the easiest person to get to know. Quite conservative, like I said, which is quite rare in America, in Hollywood, but lives for the sort of the. He's one of the most talkative people, and then he loses the power to speak through this stroke that he has, which is sort of really, really tragic, even if you might necessarily agree with his politics. But the story was it the story about Conan. He takes the idea for Conan to Dino De Laurentiis, the producer, and De Laurentiis says, "Who do you want to play? Who do you want to play?" He says we want to make Conan. He says, "Who do you want to make Conan?" He says, "We want to use Arnold Schwarzenegger." And this is before Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous, obviously. He wants to use Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Dino De Laurentiis sort of goes off on one and sort of starts ranting. Goes, okay, if you don't want, okay, then if you don't want, what was it? You don't want Arnold Schwarzenegger. Who do you want to use then? And for a laugh, just to illustrate the point that they're willing to stick to their guns. They think about it and they go, Dustin Hoffman, and he just goes, "Oh, fuck off," and sort of boots him out. And eventually, he gets made. It's just there's a really funny story about how there was this sort of this idea that he didn't want Arnold Schwarzenegger to be Conan, and just to wind him up, they thought no. They sort of put across the idea that it'd be Dustin Hoffman. But yeah, so that's Milius and Wind and the Lion. Urge you to watch both of those. Both very good. From different eras. Milius is a recent documentary. Jesus, look at my beard. It looks really ginger, doesn't it? Well, what haven't I spoken about? 13 Assassins. 13 Assassins by Takashi Miike, a Japanese, almost like I see it as a modern, the modern equivalent of Seven Samurai. Shorter and more accessible than Seven Samurai, but it's a stunning piece of work. About this. He's the brother of the shogun, the half brother of the shogun in almost pre-industrial Japan. He's the half brother of shogun and is touted as being. It's likely that he's going to be given a more prominent role in politics, but this guy is sadistic. He's a malevolent presence. He's sadistic, and he wants to bring about a sort of new age of war. He makes that point throughout the film, and he's just a scumbag. I should have articulated that better, but he murders people left, right, and centre just for his own enjoyment. Is that sort of thing, and the main aide of the shogun takes it upon himself. He realises that this man can never come to power. He can never be given a greater influence of his own. So they have to do something about it, but without compromising the shogun's position or his own position. So he employs not a samurai, is a retainer called Shinzaemon. What's his first name? Can't remember. Shinzaemon, who goes about recruiting 12 other samurai to basically to ambush this man and his entourage before they can get to their home territory, to which point they'd be untouchable. But it's by Takashi Miike, who's quite prolific. I urge anyone to go any Takashi Miike film. It'll be he's unconventional, often unconventional, but always worthwhile. I mean, I've seen the film called Happiness of the Katakuris, and from the the trailer, it looked like a zombie film, but when I watched it, it was like a weird musical, really weird, but worthwhile. Odd. I've not seen it since, but it was. But no, it's basically the main pull of the film is the last hour. It's basically these 13 characters up against these 200 this 200 strong entourage of this scumbag. What the hell's his name? I can't remember the main villain's name is, the main antagonist. No, it's gone. But they set up this ambush. They rig up this town, and they bribe the people who run the town, and basically set it up for this hour-long battle at the end, just bloodthirsty and over the top, but self-conscious to the point, self-consciously over the top. It's not context-free. It's got context, so it's it's just fantastic. I'm just tempted. I watched it a couple of times recently. I'm tempted to go and watch it again. I just love it. It has it's about it's pre-industrial Japan. It's not in the sort of feudal times. I think I read a review and it referred to it as being feudal times. It's not, because the Ronin, the samurai who in this film, they don't have any actual experience of fighting. They train, but they don't have any experience of fighting, and that's the theme that runs through the film. None of them have killed anyone, even though they train with swords sort of every day, and they're all sort of totally skilled, and that's part of the reason why this ridiculous situation at the end is sort of believable, because of because it's not something that they do, whereas years or decades or centuries before it would have been not commonplace, but they would have been more experienced. But no, the main pull of the film is the last hour or so. It's phenomenal. It's just, you don't even have to bother reading the subtitles, but it's got the sort of standard characters. Sorry, I don't make a noise. It's got standard characters, like there's the typical. There's always a buffoon in those films, and it's got one of those. But it's just an excellent film. It's 13 Assassins. What haven't I seen? Cabin in the Woods. If any one film is going to blow your mind, it's going to be Cabin in the Woods. I went into it, first time I watched it, I've seen it a good few times now. First time I watched it, I was aware of its reputation, but I was aware of it as a good horror film, but didn't really know or understand what its nature was. I thought it was just a standard horror film, just sort of done with a bit sort of tongue in cheek. But no, it's really difficult not to give too much away, because I watched it the first time and enjoyed it. It did blow my mind. I'll say. I think when I last made this video, I said it will blow your mind about a million times. It won't. You won't pick what's going to happen at all. I watched it, enjoyed it. I was just like wide-eyed, especially through to the end. And I went straight from there onto Amazon to maybe look at buying myself a copy. I read some reviews, and just purely for the nature of the film, I sort of not unexpectedly. Sort of the user reviews, which I often, they're not really reliable in this sense, especially when it comes to things like films, subjective things. It's just purely for the nature of the film. It got slightly expected, sort of 3 stars out of 5 sort of thing. But I always like to, slightly, masochistically. No, was that right? No, I can't remember what word I'm thinking of. But it gets to the point where I read some of the people who gave it 1 star, because I loved it that much. I want to see who these people are who hated it. And then one person said totally predictable. They didn't really write much else, but they wrote totally predictable, and that really irritated me because if there's one film I've seen in the last few years, or probably ever, and that's a big claim. Big claim. I mean, there's. I was going to say there's one twist, like in what was it? I See Dead People. What film's that? I've forgotten. I saw it in so much rubbish, but everybody knows that twist. You will never pick that. It goes beyond sort of twists. They're not twists. It's totally and utterly unpredictable. You'll never pick it, and that's what irritated me that much about this one person's comment. They hated it because they called it predictable. This film is the least predictable film you will ever watch. It's a film. It's a horror film about horror films. It will subvert your expectations. If you're a fan of horror films, maybe it will stick in your mind. You'll from that point on, every time you watch a horror film, you'll have the Cabin in the Woods in the back of your mind, and and that you might not necessarily like that. It's getting a bit gloomy in here, isn't it? That's a bit better. You might not necessarily like that, but it's so much fun. You won't pick it anywhere, and I don't care who says. Anybody claims that they predicted what happens. You'll never pick it at all. It's by written by Joss Whedon. I can't remember who directed it. It's written by Joss Whedon, and I think Joss Whedon's. I didn't dislike Buffy. I didn't really think it was for me. It wasn't really written for me for some reason. I saw one or two, and I saw it for what it was. I saw it for a good piece of work, but I never really watched it to any extent. But I've watched and enjoyed a lot of what Joss Whedon's done since. Like, for instance, Serenity. I love Serenity, and I think Cabin in the Woods is just as good as anything he's ever done. It's just it'll blow your mind. It's a horror film about horror films. It takes it recognises the conventions. It's postmodern. It has that sort of knowing element to it. It sees the conventions and the traditions of horror, and basically pulls the rug out from under your feet. And whatever you expect to happen, you try and pick the beginning. You won't. You won't. It's brilliant. It takes its scope is wider than anything as well. And it's got a brilliant sense of humour. It's got a very knowing sense of humour. It's self-aware, and I love that about films. Any film that's self-aware, it has context. It's too many films, generally conservative films, don't really understand. They have no self-awareness at all. They purport to have self-awareness. I'm gonna bore you again because I'll bore myself talking about how much I dislike this series. But The Expendables. It purports to have self-awareness, but it doesn't. The Cabin in the Woods is all about it. It's brilliant. Go and watch it. It's maybe sort of with tentative steps if you're into horror films, because it will affect how you watch films from that point on. I think it would. Maybe you might disagree with me. Maybe people who've seen it would disagree with me, but it's a horror film about horror films. So no, go and give it a crack. It's The Cabin in the Woods. Finally, it's a long video. Finally, this is a film I watched on YouTube. I've forgotten where I saw a clip of it. I saw a clip, and I thought it's a film from 1930 called Hell's Angels. Just past the age of the silent film, just into the era of the talkies, and it sort of shows there's all these elements in it. That are sort of left over from the silent era, like there's these, just these sort of jumps to sort of black dialogue boxes with, like just caption boxes and things like that, left over from the silent era, and it's called Hell's Angels. It's about two brothers. It took me a while to work out that they were two brothers. I thought they were two friends, but they're two brothers who initially clash over their love of this sort of flighty woman. One of them's a bit of a romantic, and the other one's the younger brother's not so much. And One of them falls in love with the other one, sort of sees her for what she is, and then basically has a pop as well. But then it's there's not there's not so much plot in this film. It's about them during the outbreak of the First World War, and they join up. They join up for different reasons. One of them joins up because he's a bit of an idealist. The other one joins up because he's walking through town and he sees a load of, I think, like an anarchist being sort of harangued by the sort of, you know, what's the word by the it's the word. It's a basic word. It's when nationalism. It's to do with nationalism, where you love your country. What's that? There's a mob who are, you know, basically they're haranguing this one anarchist because he's having a go at this woman who's selling kisses for anybody who signs up to join the good fight, and all these people, like they sort of basically, it's basically peer pressure. He joins the fight because they pressurise him into signing up, and he wants a kiss anyway, so he gets a kiss, and eventually he's joined the flying corps, and that's basically there's not so much plot. It's more of like a character study about these two brothers and the people that sort of they're in their little band of brothers, heroes, all these different. But it's the as far as being, you know, being easy, being like suitable for a contemporary audience is a bit weird because the pacing's odd. It's almost like they're still learning. The pacing's really strange. There's lots of almost like inconsequential bits of dialogue, just really little chunks of dialogue, and you know, even though you see it as like a character study, they're a bit odd. And you think they don't really go anywhere. They don't really add to anything. But you know, all this sort of thing builds, and the pacing's really strange. It's a 2 hour long film, or 2 hours and 10. I watched it on YouTube, and I just sat and watched it I think I watched it in 2 chunks. But and it's about they join the flying corps. It's by Howard Hughes, by the way. By Howard Hughes, who's the subject for The Aviator, the film, the Leonardo DiCaprio film, and it's also got Jean Harlow in it, who was almost like, I think she became Hollywood's first superstar, like post silent film superstar, the first superstar of the talkies, I think. So in that sense, it's interesting, and but the main body of the film is about these two brothers. She plays the slag. And they do meet her again, sort of at the end of the film, or you know, sort of later on. I think she follows them for some reason. She follows them to the fight, and she works in a bar while they're off sort of flying sorties. Sorry, my beard tickles my nose, but I think no, it's like I said, it's an odd film, not so much of a narrative. But I think the main draw of the film, there's often one single draw, is the dogfights. It's by Howard Hughes. Apparently it took 2 years to make, and quite an expensive film. It's epic. The scope is huge, but the main draw of the film are the dogfights because they're all done live in biplanes. It has certain characters. It has von Richthofen. You know, he's a character in it. You see his plane, and that his presence adds the tension because he was sort of like the world famous ace, fighter ace, wasn't he, von Richthofen? But it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long. I'd say from about 90 minutes in, there's about a 20-25 minute dogfight done silently, shot live, choreographed using, I don't know, probably about 40 biplanes, and it is phenomenal. It basically wipes the floor with any CGI based film. You know, what's the most recent one? I suppose that Red Tails, all done in CGI about Second World War fighters. You watch Hell's Angels. It wipes the floor with it. It's just the fact it's live. They must have it's from 1930. cameras mounted on planes as they're conducting these choreographed dogfights. There's a lot of sort of point of view flying, point of view, almost like some third person camera shots where you're right behind the pilot's head. Sometimes you're you see these just basically focusing on the guns with the muzzle flare and stuff like that, and the whole, you see these wide shots as well, and it's really, there's certain, actually there's one bit where they're dropping bombs on their target, and you see the bomb drop. You basically watch it from above. You see the bomb drop from a bird's eye, and you see it hit, and then the explosion comes up towards you. The fact this is from 1930 blows my mind. I would urge anyone to watch it because it shows you what's possible. Obviously, it's incredibly dangerous, and I think the stories that people died making this film. But it's a bit of a passion project, I think, for Howard Hughes. But it reinforces my own preference for live stunt work over CGI. CGI will never match anything like that, even though it's easier and cheaper and safer. But I mean, I'll put some stills in. Hopefully, you get an idea of it. But I'll even put a link to the actual film, because it's on YouTube, and it's got weird, I think it's like Catalan subtitles, but it's all in English mostly. Some of it's in German. There's no subtitles to the German, so you have to basically make it up in your head. But otherwise, it's called Hell's Angels, and it's from 1930, and the last is about sort of 20, 25 minute, maybe 20, 25 minute, half an hour dogfight, almost in silence. It's just phenomenal. It reminds me of, it has that rawness of something like Mad Max 2, with all the live stunt work, all that really visceral, car chases, and jumping from car to car. It's got a lot of that. I mean, there's one point this guy's he's in this bomber, and he's operating the mounted gun, and he's got these planes coming from behind, and he has to turn the gun round and point it up and fire it at the plane coming in from behind, and you can see his jacket sort of billowing in the wind, and everything's, you can't hear the dialogue. You barely hear the dialogue. It's just basically whispered, like a little whisper, and they have to shout it. You can't hear it, and that just adds to the whole atmosphere. And I would watch Hell's Angels purely as a contemporary cinema watcher, purely for that half an hour section of dogfights. It blew my mind. But anyway. That's almost as long as the last go at this video. I'm positive I didn't remember a lot of the points I wanted to make from the old video, but hopefully it's worth watching. But I'm going to let you go. I'm going to edit in some pictures and try and make them look half decent without being too choppy. I don't think it's going to work, but anyway. Thanks for watching. I hope this is worthwhile, and I'll see you later. Cheers.